It's hard to believe that you're only 18 years old and you've been told you'll spend the rest of your life in this facility.
What I believe is it's possible that I could be here the rest of my life. I'm working on my appeal to this day. But you say me 18, there's people here 16 years old with natural lives. 17. That ain't having established nothing in the world, but growing up. And they stuck in here with a natural life, It needs to change. Something has to change.
There's some mothers out there that their sons may be buried, and sometimes I feel like that with Corey, that it's a part of me, I feel like, because he's so much of him being so much taken away from him, from being incarcerated for the rest of his life.
Sometimes you feel like he's dead?
Well, a part of him, because he's out, he's not out here in the real world like he would say it, and he's missing out on a whole lot.
Welcome, everybody. I want to welcome y'all to the Untitled Podcast. I am your guy, your host, your boy in general, the infamous one, G Phrase. And I want to welcome everybody once again to not the brown paper bag, that's Mondays, but to the Untitled Podcast. I thank y'all for tapping in, and I hope that everybody is having a blessed day on purpose. We're going to get right into it. I don't have no time to waste. The information that I'm going to talk about today is very important. And what I want to talk about today is the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act of 2020. And many may be wondering, why did I choose this subject matter this week? Because I think it's imperative that we understand what Congress is passing, the bills that they're passing, and how they affect our everyday lives. And so what I want to do is, maybe not on this episode, I think I'm going to turn this into a, multi-part episode. But what I want to do is just get into it, dive into it, and break some things down. Because right now in America, it's fair to say that we do have a policing problem, especially in the black community. And I know that there's a difference when it comes to talking about that on social media, in the public, at the barbershops, wherever you sit down and socialize at. This is a constant conversation, because I'm a firm believer that every police officer is not a bad police officer. But those one, maybe two, maybe three individuals that is on the police force that do bad things in the society, especially in the black community, makes it look bad for everybody else that's on the police force. Now, I'll be the first one to tell you is that, I've been to prison. I am a convicted felon, and I understand the need and the importance of police officers in our community. Like, I'm not gonna sugarcoat that. I don't want to go back to prison. So therefore, if I'm in a situation to where I can call the police and they show up and handle the situation like they're supposed to, this is always my first choice. However, there is a part of me that has a little leeriness when it comes to the police, especially when they're behind me, when I'm in my car, and I know I haven't done anything wrong. So one thing that I want to talk about tonight is, like I said, the George Floyd Justice and Police Act. Okay. Now, there's a lot to break down. And like I said, we're not going to get into it. I made up my mind. I'm going to do a multi-part series on this. But one thing I want to get into is the heading of the bill. Because right now, the House of Representatives have passed it, but the Senate has not, so that it can become law. So one thing that I want to do is first is just talk about the heading. And let's get into that because the heading is important. And I have the bill right here that was put together by the CBC. And it reads as such: the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act is the first ever bold, comprehensive approach to hold police accountable, end racial profiling, change the culture of law enforcement, empower our communities, and build trust between law enforcement and our communities by addressing systematic racism and bias to help save lives. The Justice and Policing Act would, number one, establish a national standard for the operation of police departments. Number two, mandate police collection on data encounters. Number three, reprogram existing funds to invest in transformative community-based policing programs. And four, streamline federal law to prosecute excessive force and establish independent prosecutors for police investigations. Now, that was a lot to ingest or to think about. But it's some things in there, and I don't agree with the exact language of the bill. But what I want to do is talk about some things that are in the bill. Now, one thing that I want to talk about first is when it talked about to eliminate systematic racism in policing, especially in black and brown communities. First thing is I'm going to do is I'm going to play a video, okay? And this video happened in San Diego, California. It was put up by D.L. Hughley a few hours ago. I don't know the date and the time when this incident happened, but this is a video of the police stopping a gentleman and an 8-year-old boy on a traffic stop, and police have their guns drawn. So I'm going to play the video, and then we're going to get in it because I think it ties directly into when they talk about systematic racism.
Why?
Now, as we can see from the video, right, the driver was instructed to get out the car with his hands up. The driver complied with every instruction from the police officers, and he complied with everything. He didn't do nothing wrong. But if you look at that video, And you can go back and catch this replay because it will be up on Libre TV. Go back and catch the replay of that video, and you'll see one part in there that's very disturbing. Now, police officers do have a hard job. I will admit that. Like, I was a guy in the streets. I know the hell that I caused police. I ran from them. I did all kinds of stuff. I lied to them. I did everything possible to get out of this jam when I encountered police. I also had instances and encounters with police officers when I didn't do anything wrong, but they prejudged me. But in this video, when the 8-year-old boy got out the car, a particular officer, not all officers, as you can see in the video, not all officers had their guns drawn, but one officer did. And you can hear people in the background saying he's an 8-year-old boy. The officer knew his name. So why would the officer still need to have his gun drawn when there's an 8-year-old boy following every order that you're asking and getting out of the car? It's my fondest belief that once he realized that people were watching, people were making statements, is when he decided to divert the gun in a different direction. But also in that video, you can see that there was other officers who didn't take the same posture as the officer who had his gun. And even one officer stepped up to make sure that the young child was pulled to safety. He didn't put him in handcuffs. He didn't put his hands on the car to search him. He just made sure that he was safe, and he set him on the curve. So many may be wondering, why am I showing this video? The reason why I'm showing this video, because I think it ties into, in this bill, the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, when it comes to systematic racism. I'm a firm believer that you cannot legislate racism. There's nothing in the world that you can do about that. That's in the hearts and minds of the people that are serving on police forces. You can't legislate that. I don't even have the answer to how you change that. But one thing I do know is that you can't legislate that from the federal, the state, or the local level. This is something that police forces have to weed out on their own. They have to figure out who's in this thing for the right reasons and who is in it for the wrong reasons. Once again, I believe that the overwhelming majority of police are in it because they want to make sure that America is safe. That's my belief. But I think you have those two rotten apples who make it bad for the rest. And so in that video that I just showed, how do we stop that? Like, I can be with my daughter. I have a 6-year-old daughter. If I get pulled over by the police officer or police here in Atlanta, how can I make sure that everything is going to go correctly? I don't want no gun pulled on my daughter as she's exiting the back seat of my car while the police are detaining me. I'm not that type of person that's going to let that just ride. Now, a lot of people may say you should just comply, but I'm the type of person, as a father, I'm going to protect my daughter at all costs, even if it costs my life. So if I'm pulled out of a car by a police officer and they having my daughter exit the vehicle and they have a gun pointed at my daughter, I'm going to intervene. I'm going to do that. And I would think that any man that considers himself a man, whether white, black, yellow, or brown, would do the same thing. Because who wants to bury their child? Especially at the hands of another individual. I don't even care if it's a police officer. If you put my daughter in any life-threatening position, I'm going to defend my daughter. So, once again, how do we eliminate systematic racism through legislation? It's nearly impossible. You can't do it. It's up to the local and state police forces, I should say, to try to weed that out. Another thing that I want to touch on, because it's so important that this bill, right, is being talked about after the 1-year anniversary of Breonna Taylor. Now, I know this thing has become politicized, but I'm a firm believer when innocents lose their lives, it shouldn't be politicized. If somebody's at fault, they're at fault. It's my position that the police are at fault for taking the life of Breonna Taylor. You can agree or disagree. Hit me up on Twitter at Inspires the Block, or on IG Inspires the Block, and we can have our conversation about that. But one thing that I agree with is that she shouldn't have lost her life because there were a lot of mistakes made. From the no-knock warrant all the way to them thinking that there was drugs in the house when that was her former boyfriend, who actually had a warrant out for his arrest. So I think that police should be held accountable according to this bill. I think that's important. If people like myself, who's been convicted of a felony, have to be held accountable for the rest of our lives for the mistakes that we've made in life, even if it's just one time. My felony conviction happened in 1996. But still to this day, I cannot erase that off my record. America is going to remind me that I'm a convicted felon. It's going to be based on housing. It's going to be based in certain states on voting. It's going to be based on certain jobs and fields of employment. I'm going to be reminded of that for the rest of my life. I don't think it's fair. I don't. Because I've been free for the past 9 years. I have not had any run-in with the law other than maybe a minor traffic ticket. But as far as like anything that can put me back in jail or in prison, no, I don't live that life anymore. But do I want my gun rights restored? Of course. I want to be able to protect my family. If I move to a state to where if you have a felony conviction and, you know, your voting rights are limited, no, that should be restored. Also, housing, employment. I want to be as much of this society as anybody else. But because I have a felony conviction, I'm constantly reminded of it. And it's always going to be for the rest of my life. So therefore, I believe that it should be equally applied. If it has to apply to me for the rest of my life, even though I'm on a path and I'm living my life the way that it should be lived, I'm reformed, I think that police officers should be held to that same standard. I think that police, like it's put in the bill, should be put in a registry when they have complaints or when they have been accused of police brutality and it can be proven. I think that they should put in a registry and they should live the same life that I do, because it's hell. It's hell when you out here in America and you're trying to do the right thing, but you have so many roadblocks against you. Now, since we are on the eve of the 1 year anniversary, well, I shouldn't say anniversary, but 1 year since the murder of Breonna Taylor, I'm going to play a video of the origin of this bill, and we're going to get into it. Now, of course, it's Nancy Pelosi talking. I'm not a Nancy Pelosi fan. I'm not a Republican fan. I'm not a Democratic, none of that. I don't give two shits about Congress. I think they're all corrupt. But however, it's important that we listen to the language and study the language of these public figures that we elect in office, so that we can understand in the direction in which they're willing to go when it comes to the direction of America. So here is Nancy Pelosi speaking about the George Floyd bill.
George Floyd gasped his last words, "I can't breathe," and ignited a nationwide reckoning on the racial injustice and police brutality that exists in our country. I can't breathe. Since then, Americans from every corner of the country, and actually people throughout the world, have taken to the streets to peacefully protest violence against Black Americans. Yet despite these protests, violence continues. We cannot accept this epidemic of injustice, which is why we will pass and send, we have passed now, we have passed and sent to the Senate and to the President, the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act, so it can become the law of the land.
After Rodney King's brutal beating, nothing fundamentally changed in the country. Years later, we had cell phone cameras. And now we have seen video after video after video of people being beat and people being killed. That is the reason for the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. 2 measures of the bill hold police officers accountable, and then other measures of the bill support raising the standards and accreditation process of policing in the United States.
Now, many may be asking, is this bill important? I believe it is. And not just for black people. Because you have a lot of poor white people, poor people of other ethnicities that have bad encounters with the police. The difference is it go undocumented. Like when you're in the hood, people quick to pull out their phones and start recording. But I'm pretty sure in rural areas, you have some poor white people that's complaining about the police department. So therefore, this bill not only applies to black people, it applies to everybody. The difference is it has George Floyd's name on it. And we all saw what happened to George Floyd. Whether you agree or disagree, we all saw it. We saw a man in handcuffs with a knee on his neck. Now, people argue, well, he had drugs in his system. He died of cardiac arrest. However you want to spin it, the fact that an officer had his knee on his neck when he was detained in handcuffs was wrong. At the very least, he should be held accountable for that. And I think that that's fair. Because just imagine if it was one of your loved ones. It was your son, your daughter. Let's flip the role on this. And I'm talking to white people on this one. Just imagine you take the same scenario, the same circumstances, but it's your white child. Right? It's your white child that got pulled over by a black police officer. Your child may have some narcotics in their system. And this black police officer, after detaining your child, put their knee in your child's neck and your child's life was lost. Would you still feel the same? Would you have that argument that George Floyd was a criminal? He committed some crime with a counterfeit bill and he lost his life because he had narcotics in his system, and just so happened that this black police officer had their knee in your child's neck? I don't think that you would look at it that way as you do when it comes to black people. I don't. Because the loss of life is a loss of life. There's no coming back from that. And when you feel in your heart and in your gut and your instinct that something was done wrong, you want justice. And I think that this is the thing that black, brown, white, and yellow people need to get on accord. We all have the same sentiment when it comes to government. We want government out of our lives, whether it's the state, local, or federal level. But when certain circumstances arise, when it comes to government, we want to pick and choose sides. Like right now in America, a lot of white people feel like their rights are being infringed on because there's mass mandates when it comes to COVID-19, the coronavirus. But black people for years been screaming that, hold on, there's been infringement on our rights since we've been citizens of this nation, and white people outside of the government won't get on the same accord as us. Like we have the same complaint. When you argue about taxes, we argue about police brutality. When you argue about the government taking your land and or whatever, certain rights, we have those same arguments also. But just don't pick and choose when you want to fight with us. America would be a better society if black and white and brown people get together and understand that government is the problem, not each other. It's government. In the last administration, a lot of black people didn't support Donald Trump. And you have an overwhelming majority of people supporting Joe Biden. However, there's going to come a time when black people start complaining about government. Once again, whether it's from the state, local, or federal level. And this is the same concern that you have. So why not get on the same accord with us? And let's make a change to it. So this is why the George Floyd Justice Act is important. We need more voices from our white allies to help us to execute these laws, to make sure that they become law. Because it's going to come a point in time to where you're going to feel like the government is infringing on your rights to exist in America as a citizen, as a free citizen. The difference is we are the ones that usually be on the forefront when these violations happen. So why wouldn't you want to be on our side? I mean, come on, the majority of black people do well in this country. Don't take what you see on the mainstream media as the majority of black people, especially in urban areas. The media is going to portray black people in a negative light because controversy sells. But like myself, my great aunts, my uncles, majority of my cousins are doing well in this country. Majority of my friends are doing well in this country. They are part of this society. Do I have a few friends that, have done some crazy shit in life? Yeah. But that's not the overwhelming majority of people that I know that's black in America. So come on now. I don't care if you are conservative. I don't. If you're a white conservative, you should ally with the black liberals. And it's all based on conversation. Don't come in with these talking points. Don't come in with these stereotypes. Try to understand the black experience. Internalize that and then give your opinion. Don't just come automatically rejecting the black experience and saying where black people go wrong at. No, we've been had this cry for a very long time. Let's do a little bit of history lesson. When did black people start voting overwhelmingly majority Democratic? Can you answer that? Do you know when that happened? Because that hasn't always been that black people vote democratically. No, at one point in time, it was the polar opposite. We voted overwhelmingly Republican. Because by nature, most black people are conservative. It wasn't until civil rights, if you know your history. Like I'm talking in my Sonny Johnson voice right now. Hope for y'all get it. But it's how she be doing on Sirius XM radio 125 The Patriot every Saturday at 1 o'clock p.m. But she likes to talk like that so that she can drive a point home. The same thing I'm doing. Black people weren't always democratic. No. This has been like the past 50 years, 60 years. That black people have been voting overwhelmingly Democratic. And that's because of the civil rights era. And ever since then, Republicans and conservatives have just let it go. But on a lot of the issues that y'all complain about with government, we do too. We've been doing it for a long time, but we haven't been taken serious when it comes to our issues. So once again, if you want to destroy the Democratic Party, white conservatives, white Republicans, understand the black experience and bring a comprehensive resolution to our issues. I know y'all don't like the Democratic Party. And once again, black people are conservative by nature. But if you always want to play the polar opposites of the black experience or black issues, you'll have your same talking points. Black people only want free stuff. Black people only, they're on a plantation, on a Democratic plantation. And when that's the furthest from the truth. Most black people want government to get the hell out the way. We don't want government. If you look in America right now, the most successful and entrepreneur people in America right now are black women. Does that look like a government handout? No. They're doing this shit on their own. They can give two shits about government. Black women are standing up and doing something for self. So I'll reiterate real quick is that white conservatives, if you want to destroy the Democratic Party, align yourself with the black experience and understand what we go through instead of dismissing everything that we talked about. Another video that I want to play for you. And like I said, I'm going to do a multi-part series of the George Floyd bill because it's just too much in here for me to get through in one show. But I want to play a video dealing with Breonna Taylor because Breonna Taylor has become in a political argument in this country by the left and the right. And once again, like I said earlier, her death shouldn't have happened. However, it's up for discussion. I know people want to discuss it. We can do that. But let's look at facts. So I'm going to play this video, and then we'll get into the discussion behind it.
Say her name.
Family and friends gathered together this weekend to remember Breonna Taylor, 1 year after her death at the hands of Louisville police.
We got two different Americas. We got one for Black America and one for white America.
The 26-year-old black EMT was shot by police executing a no-knock narcotics warrant at her home while she and her boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, were already in bed.
Keep walking back. Walk backward.
Walker thought it was intruders entering the apartment. He fired one shot, striking an officer in the leg.
Breonna and I did not know who was banging on the door, but the police know what they did.
Police fired back, killing Taylor. No drugs were found in the apartment. None of the officers involved were charged in Taylor's death, but one of the officers, Brett Hankinson, was indicted by a grand jury on wanton endangerment charges for shooting into a neighbor's apartment. Sergeant Jonathan Mattingly, who fired 6 times, and Detective Miles Cosgrove, who fired a total of 16 rounds, were not charged. All 3 have been fired from the force. Some members of the grand jury say Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron never presented them with homicide as a charge to consider against the officers, and have now joined a group of other Kentucky citizens seeking to impeach Cameron for breach of public trust. Cameron responded saying the petition is, quote, so lacking in legal and factual support that it should be dismissed. The anniversary of Taylor's death comes as the trial of Derrick Chauvin gets underway in Minneapolis, one of 4 officers charged in the death of George Floyd.
Say her name.
Taylor and Floyd's deaths last year fueling nationwide protests. Their names now both part of the rallying cry demanding social justice. Elwin Lopez, ABC News, Atlanta.
Now, I played that video for a purpose, right? Because I know it strikes nerves. I know it brings a tingle up certain people's legs. And I know that people like to use certain talking points when it comes to the black experience in America. But once again, I'll reiterate. What if that was your child? Would you just feel like she shouldn't have been messing with the wrong people? George Floyd, should he have complied, even though he did comply because he was in handcuffs? Would you feel the same way if that was your child? And I'm talking to white America. I'm not talking to nobody else. I'm talking to white America. Because we need to have a dialogue. We need to have a conversation. We, black people, are here. We're not going away. We're not going back to Africa. We damn sure not doing that. We don't even have that connection. Some of us do, but the overwhelming majority don't. So we're not going nowhere. We're very much a part of this fabric of America as you are. So in order to exist peacefully, we need to have these conversations on the black experience. We need to have these conversations about racism, because black people don't just scream that for the sake of screaming it. When black people say they are being terrorized by the police, we're not just saying that for the sake of saying it. There's an experience behind that. I have that experience. I can talk about it firsthand. I'll do it on another video. But I know what that feels like. I know what it feels like to walk out of a store. The police see you walk inside a store, and the minute you come out, they got their guns drawn. And you went in there to buy a soda and some chips. You can't tell me I'm wrong when I'm telling you about my experience. But according to the census, white people are the majority in this country. And I'll emphasize in air quotes, the majority. But you understand what it feels like, especially through this COVID experience, to have your rights stomped on. So why not talk with black people about that? We've been doing it. We've been experiencing that for a long time. This is not something that we're making up. But now you get it when the government tells you you have to wear a mask. The government, you feel it when the government tells you you have to pay a certain higher level of taxes. You get it when you go into an established corporation and you don't have a mask on and they kick you out and the police come and tell you you got to get the fuck out because you don't got a mask on. Just imagine if all that was happening while you were walking down the street. Just imagine if that happened while you were in your car going about your daily life. This is the conversation that we need to have and align ourselves on if we're going to make America better. I know a lot of people are content with having an old America, but regardless to what your belief is, America is evolving. At one point in time, the only way to travel was a train. Now we have planes, we have automobiles, we have fully electric cars. You can get on a hoverboard and go around the store or go to the store. I mean, America is evolving. I remember, I'm that old enough to remember this cell phones wasn't even fathomable. But we live in a society now that cell phones are a must. I got this belief, if I'm ever robbed by somebody, you could take my wallet, just don't take my cell phone. Don't take my cell phone. Take my wallet, take my money, don't take my phone. But America is evolving. America is becoming darker. Oh, should I reiterate that? America is becoming darker. So therefore, white people in this country, especially poor white people, rural area living white people, you should have a common connection to black people. Because at the end of the day, the government is the problem. It's not each other. And if you can't comprehend that, we're always going to have two Americas. Like, I can talk about the difference of the two Americas. I live in the city of Atlanta, but I work in the suburbs 30 miles outside of Atlanta. There is a difference. No, it's not the same experience. It's not. And the reason why is because especially white conservatives have their beliefs. If you're not willing to have your belief challenged when it comes to the black experience, then I don't know how we fix this thing. I don't. If you're comfortable with having two Americas, then, hey, it is what it is. I'm going to put something up on the screen real quick, because I usually don't entertain this kind of stuff, but I just seen it. Somebody told me, get your facts straight. Black on black crime is a problem in America. Right? What about white on white crime? What about Asian on Asian crime? What about Mexican on crime? Like, whoever this guy is that's in my mentions, right? People commit crime wherever they live at. And he told me I need to educate myself, right? No, you need to educate yourself because you really sound like the dumbass, right? Crime happens wherever the majority of the people is at. If you go to Jewtown, somewhere like that, the majority of the crime is committed by Jews. If you go to a Chinatown, majority of the crime is committed by people of Asian descent. That's the reality of America. It's always based on where you're at. So if you want to be the dumbass to try to jump in my mentions, jump in my on my podcast and try to educate me about black on black crime, of course it's going to seem like a problem when that's the only thing the mainstream media is highlighting. But if you go to anywhere where there's a majority of Mexicans, it's the same percentage. It's the same percentage in rural areas, trailer parks where majority white people live at, and majority Jewish communities, Asian communities. Wherever the majority of the dynamic of the ethnicity is at, of course, there's going to be that kind of on whoever crime. So you get your facts straight and don't come at me. I know what's going on. You're the one that's just the ass trying to come at me on my podcast. You came on my podcast. If you don't like what I'm saying, get the fuck on. We have respect for ourselves. Majority of black people do not commit crimes on each other. It's what the media highlight. And you're probably one of the dumbasses that like to argue that the media is wrong, but yet when it comes to black people, you believe that. My aunts and uncles and people that I grew up with, majority of people don't commit crimes on each other. I live down here in Atlanta. I live in a good area. Lakewood, to be exact. It's a real peaceful area, diverse area. There's not a lot of crime. So don't come on my podcast talking this dumbass shit unless you get your facts straight. Whatever the majority of the ethnic group is, that will be the crime. Even if it's by a small percentage, the media is going to highlight that. Like I say, once again, I'm pretty sure whoever you are, I'm not even going to read your name. Dude or she, whoever you are, do a little bit more research before you come for me, because I didn't come for you. And if you don't like what I'm saying, you can just dip. Get the fuck on. I didn't come for you. I didn't ask you to be on my podcast. You get the fuck on. So, with that being said, I appreciate everybody tuning in. You know, I thank y'all for tapping in every Sunday at 7 p.m. to the Corrected Felon Podcast. Tomorrow, the Brown Paper Bag Podcast will be live with me and my boy Saul G. Also, too, every Wednesday at 7 p.m., we'll do the Purple Pill Politic. Also, too, go over to Middle Pastor Media, get you some merch. That's the media company that I've got. We do good things over there. We provide great content for everybody to absorb and tap into. But at the same time, every donation, every purchase that you make supports the company so that we can continue to hire people and also bring forth great content. So I want to thank everybody. Once again, I'll be back, not next week because I'll be out of town, but the week after. Or I might do a pre-recorded show still dealing with the George Floyd, because it's a lot to get to. Like, this bill is extensive and it's a lot to dig into. So we're going to get into it over the next few weeks. You know, I'm going to break it down, give you my perspective on it. Hit me up on Twitter at Inspires the Block. Also on IG. We can have a great dialogue. Not like this dumbass who jumped in my shit earlier talking stupid. Apparently, he's somebody that don't get the black experience or want to unite black and brown and white people in this country. He just want to continue to keep the bullshit going. But like I said, y'all have a blessed day on purpose. This audio will be available tomorrow morning. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share the Corrected Felon Podcast. And everybody have a blessed day on purpose.